do an exorcism, there's a guy that can be a lay person, a non-priest person, that says, bless me, Father, if I have sinned, and he's rattling on, he's reading from the Bible, and he's there. The guy that was going to do the exorcism, the senior father, got called back to Rome. Never saw him again. The young 29-year-old priest retired. The 32-year-old priest retired. The 35-year-old priest retired. But that's still on my bucket list to do an exorcism. I've offered money, all kinds of, but they don't want lay people. And my nuns are afraid if I do an exorcism, I'm not going to be able to support them anymore. So they don't want me to do an exorcism. But that's one of the things that's on my bucket list to do an exorcism. I'll jump on the fucking devil. I mean, man, I'll fucking choke the life out of him. I'll jump on that son of a bitch and stab him in the fucking eye. No problem. I went and I gave my wife a hug and a kiss, and I hugged the kids. And they're looking at me. What's wrong? The oldest son, you don't have cancer or anything, do you, Dad? I mean, because it was so out of character for me to do something like that. But 3 days later, I get a phone call from Father John. He says, I got some terrible news, Dan. And I thought it was about my mom, because he knew my mom, blah, blah. He says, no, Monsignor Peresina died last night. What? He died last night. He didn't say it then, but later on, we're on the golf course playing golf, and he says, I guess I should be happy that I didn't hear your confession, because Monsignor Peresina heard it and then died in his sleep. And I said, that's a shitty thing to say, John. Jesus Christ, I could be sensitive, and it could stifle my life or something. And then he said, what did you tell him? Well, that's between him now and the big man. So I've had some of these experiences, and the nuns that we support in Africa, the Philippines, and Sri Lanka, I wanted to experience an exorcism. And the leading exorcism priest on the planet, Catholic priest, is in Manila. In fact, the top two guys are in Manila. So I went out to the mission and I hounded to experience an exorcism. So I went out there and I spent, and it's online on Facebook. I'm standing next to a priest about this tall, okay, and he had done 4,000 or 5,000 exorcisms. We spent all day out there, him trying to talk me out of it. And then he introduces me to 3 exorcism priests, 29, 32, and 35 years old. They all look 70 years old. Their eyes sunken back in their head, the 29-year-old white hair, wrinkles, they look like out of a fucking movie. And they spent 3 or 4 hours trying to talk me out of doing an exorcism. The 29-year-old, when he told me he was 29, I almost fainted. And he says, I'm 29, Mr. Pena. What? I said, you look 65. We've given our souls to doing this. You don't need to. So we get lined up. And now, when you do an exorcism, there's a guy that can be a lay person, a non-priest person, that says, bless me, Father, if I have sinned, and he's rattling on, he's reading from the Bible, and he's there. The guy that was going to do the exorcism, the senior father, got called back to Rome. Never saw him again. The young 29-year-old priest retired. The 32-year-old priest retired. The 35-year-old priest retired. That's still on my bucket list to do an exorcism. I've offered money, all kinds of, but they don't want lay people. And my nuns are afraid if I do an exorcism, I'm not going to be able to support them anymore. So they don't want me to do an exorcism. But that's one of the things that's on my bucket list to do an exorcism. I'll jump on the fucking devil. I mean, man, I'll fucking choke the life out of him. I'll jump on that son of a bitch and stab him in the fucking eye. No problem.
You want to be the one performing it?
No. There's 3 people in an exorcism. There's a guy reading the Latin. There's a guy with a cross on his forehead or her forehead. And then there's a third person who can be a lay person. Doesn't have to be a priest or a nun, but he's just rattling off prayers as fast as you can say them. Okay? And I would have been that person rattling off the prayers. And ask all these people, they got no reason to lie to me. He says, as far as the head spinning around and shit coming out of their mouth, that's all bullshit. But he says, levitation and all that, that's not bullshit, Not being able to hold them down, that's not bullshit. And he said, you don't want to do that, and it changes your life forever. I'm ready. Just like that guy knocked down the hill when he came up with his arm off, I'm ready, boy. I'm dancing around. That's on the back burner now. In the Philippines, it's easy because they have exorcisms all the time. And Catholic priests aren't the only ones that do exorcism. Other religions do exorcism as well. But I'm ready for them. Jump on them, get them in a headlock, pound the shit out of them. It's interesting how the new Pope sits in a little wooden chair and the old Pope sat in the gold with his red Prada shoes. The new Pope drives himself to work, lives in a little apartment, cooks his own meals. When he was a cardinal in South America, he used to hear your confession on the bus when he took the bus to work in the morning. But when you're a cardinal, you're like a king, and he's trying to downplay. And there is a lot of corruption in the Catholic Church, and there's a lot of corruption in the Catholic Vatican, the bank, and I've been partners with the Vatican Bank, so I speak from firsthand. Most of the stories you hear about the Vatican Bank and the Vatican are all true, about the corruption and the money part. And obviously sexual harassment and sexual abuse is in the headlines now, and they're not hiding it anymore, or they can't hide it anymore, and they shouldn't hide it anymore. As the Cardinal told me many years ago, we have our flaws, Mr. Pena, but we're the only ones to be around 2,000 years. That's their standard bullshit answer. But once Catholic Church says, we have your boy or your girl for the first 7 or 8 years, we own them for life. That's what they say. And those are the 7 or 8 years that your self-esteem is built. I used to teach catechism, Bible. I wanted to be a priest when I was a kid, if you can believe it. But then I discovered girls. And as soon as I discovered girls, my priesthood goals went out the window. They were mutually exclusive. If they change it about the celibacy bullshit, and you know why the Catholics have celibacy for the priests? In the 6th, 7th century, priests married. And when they died, they left all the land not to the church, but to their families. And the church didn't get it. So whoever the Pope was back then decided it was going to be celibacy. Of course, they didn't stick to it. So the materials, the lands, the farms, and all the things that the church owned through the priest went to the church and didn't go back to the families. And to this day, that's why the Catholic Church is one of the richest organizations on the planet. The Holy Scrolls aren't going to help you. What will help you, and what you have on your wristband, just fucking do it. When you're sending me your weekly reports, I'm going to say you should ask yourself, before you ask me the questions, what would Dan do? Whatever the toughest decision, the most uncomfortable decision, the decision that makes you sick to your stomach, the decision that makes you sweat, perspire, uneasy, that's the right thing to do, 99% of the time. Any questions? We eat in here, steak night. I assume you've all told somebody what kind of steak you like if you're going to eat steak. We don't make you eat steak. And if you're a Muslim, we give you pork. And if you're a Jew, we give you whatever you're not supposed to eat. And we call it something else.